Today's episode includes information about the death of individuals. If this sort of thing upsets you, may I suggest you watch a movie, maybe something like Road Warrior.
Welcome to Mayhem in the Morgue with your host, Dr. Kendall Crowns.
Today's episode, look out, look out, look out, look out. Information from the Department of Transportation states that 92% of households in the United States own a car. There are approximately 258.2 million drivers, which is a large part of the population. A total of 229 billion driving trips on 4 million miles of roadways occur every day, with the average person making 2.43 road trips daily. The reasons are typically to get to work, but also include running errands and recreational drives. These trips on average total up to 60.7 minutes of time behind the wheel and cover about 42 miles, with the latest data showing that Americans drove a grand total of 3.69 trillion miles in 2025, and the average American driving 13,562 miles. There are, of course, regional differences, with people in rural areas typically driving further to get to their destinations when compared to individuals in major urban centers. Automobile collisions are the second or third leading cause of accidental deaths in the United States, depending on age, falls being the second in the older population, and accidental poisoning, also known as drug overdoses, being the first for everyone. From the CDC, an estimated 227,664 people die in car accidents every year. Automobile collisions are one of the more common deaths we see at the morgue, almost on a daily basis. Most of them are collisions with another vehicle or fixed object, like an overpass abutment, but sometimes the accident is caused by something else. And on today's episode, I will be discussing some of these cases. So let's get started. When I was in college, medical school, and residency, I drove this old 1979 Ford Mustang that I bought from my brother in the late 80s for $400, plus a $1,000 loan from me to him. It was my first car, and it wasn't in the best of shape, but it worked and it got me from point A to point B, sometimes point Z. When my brother owned it, he was in an accident, smashing in the passenger side door, which my dad replaced with a door from a junkyard that was amazingly the same color. And another time he drove it into floodwaters and destroyed the engine. So, by the time I got it, it still had a relatively new engine. After I purchased the car from him, I drove it everywhere, city streets, rural dirt roads, highways, you name it. It was the car I drove home on breaks from medical school. It's also the car I picked up Beth in for our first date. I put thousands and thousands of miles on it. When I was in my final year of medical school, Beth and I were engaged to be married. I was returning from one of these trips and was to be picked up at the airport late in the evening. Beth was going to pick me up, and she was driving the Mustang. When I landed it at the airport and headed to the baggage claim, Beth was not there. Instead, it was my dad. When I saw him, I knew instantly something was wrong. I felt sick. As soon as he saw me, he walked quickly towards me. His face said it all. He wasn't happy. He looked concerned. And when he got close, I asked him, "Where's Beth?" And he said she had been in an accident. I instantly asked, "Is she okay?" And he said yes, but the Mustang's in bad shape. Who cares about the car, I thought. At least she was okay. When I got home that evening, I called her. She told me what had happened. She was heading down the highway when a deer bolted out in front of her. She had no time to react before the car collided with the deer. It was a big buck with a large rack. It smashed into the hood and slid up onto the hood, almost into the windshield. The deer was killed instantly, and it made the car undrivable. She was out in the middle of nowhere, on a rural dirt road, in the pitch black, and had to walk to a farmhouse to use their phone to call her dad and my mom. By the time her dad picked her up, someone had taken the deer carcass, which is what happens in Kansas. People always pick up the large roadkill, either to take the meat or make a trophy out of it. It's probably on some guy's mantle right now, and he claims he probably killed it with an arrow. In the end, Beth was okay, which is all that mattered. And for the Mustang, insurance brought it back to life, at least for a few more years. Fast forward to later when I was working in Cook County. There was an individual driving his pickup truck at a high rate of speed down a highway when a large deer was heading the opposite direction and leaped directly towards the truck at the last minute. skimming over the hood and going right through the window into the driver's side of the car, killing the driver instantly. The car continued a little ways, finally rolling to a stop in a shallow ditch. At autopsy, the decedent was an adult male. He had massive blunt force trauma of the chest, as well as the head. There were multiple lacerations, abrasions, and even puncture wounds from the antlers of the chest and abdomen. There were facial bone fractures, skull fractures, subgaleal hemorrhages of the scalp, subarachnoid hemorrhages of the brain, multiple rib fractures, laceration, contusions of the heart and lungs, and blood in both chest cavities. His cause of death was blunt force injuries, manner death accidents. Big animals in the roadways are definitely a hazard. At the medical examiner's office, we don't see them very often, but when we do, the injuries are catastrophic. There are reportedly 25,000 to 1.5 million wildlife vehicle collisions in the U.S. every year, and these result in 26,647 human injuries per year, with the majority of these collisions occurring with larger animals. The highest percentage is deer, specifically white-tailed deer, followed by horses and cows, then elk, moose, and bears. There are over 200 fatalities a year, and 77% of these fatalities are associated with collisions with deer. White-tailed deer are native to North America. There are 36 million deer in the United States, with whitetail being the most common, and Texas has the most of any state, with 5.3 million. Deer can weigh up to 125 to 300 pounds and have an average height of 3.5 feet. Only 2% of deer car collisions result in fatalities, but 85% of deer motorcycle collisions result in fatalities. The highest number of accidents occur in autumn, especially in November. This is due to the deer's seasonal migration and mating season. As winter approaches, they migrate to lower elevations or denser tree cover to avoid deep snow, which can make movement and foraging more difficult. It also helps them avoid harsh environments and predators. And during mating season, males or bucks roam widely, frequently crossing roads and not focusing on their surroundings. Accidents also occur more routinely at dawn or dusk, when deer are more active, because they are crepuscular in nature, which allows them to balance being seen while foraging with the safety of low light conditions, and this reduces visibility for predators. Also, plants are more palatable, evidently, at this time of day. States that have a higher number of deer-related accidents have higher deer population, of course, and more forested areas, especially by highways. From one national calculation, the highest risk state is West Virginia, and one study found the shift of daylight savings time in November increases animal vehicle collisions by 16% because it shifts the time of day in which rush hour occurs and gives us yet another reason to hate daylight saving time. Beth had numerous encounters with deer because she lived out in the middle of nowhere in rural Kansas. She even remembers once seeing multiple blinking white tiny lights in the distance as she was driving down a dirt road, and when she got closer, it was a herd of deer, froze in the roadway, looking at her. And that brings us to one of the other features of deer that contributes to deer vehicle collisions, and that is they freeze when they see headlights. And why do they do this? It's because deer eyes are uniquely adapted for low-light conditions, making them highly sensitive to light and adept at detecting movement in dim environments. When there is a sudden, intense light source, like a vehicle headlight, it can overwhelm their visual system, causing their pupils to dilate widely and temporarily blinding them or disorienting them, and making their vision blurry for a moment. Also, the freeze response is a primal survival mechanism known as fight, flight, or freeze. It's triggered when the deer perceives a sudden threat, and their initial reaction can be to freeze. This immobility serves as a strategy to avoid detection by predators who rely on movement to spot their prey. During this time period, the deer is assessing the situation, relying on their keen sense of smell and hearing to gather information before making the decision to run. The temporary blindness combined with the instinct to freeze means the deer will remain stationary for a little while they're assessing the situation, but the problem is the car is moving too fast for them to be able to figure out what to do, and the deer cannot react fast enough before they're hit. So in closing, deer are always out there, so use caution when you're in a heavily deer-populated area. I'm sure you get the picture. When I was in residency, one of my rotations was in St. Jude in Memphis, Tennessee. When I was done for the day, I would take the beltway to get back to my house in East Memphis. The Mustang had no air condition, or heat for that matter, and in the hot Memphis summers, I always drove home with both windows down. On one particular day when I was driving, I was passing a semi-truck. I was just starting to pass it when, bam, one of the truck tires blew. It sounded like a cannon went off next to my head. The pieces of the tire flew at the Mustang, hitting the grill and going under it. The Mustang pitched up a little bit and then slammed back down onto the highway. I skidded a little bit, got the car back under control and floored it and got in front of the truck and continued heading down the beltway, never looking back. The engine began to make a loud metallic pounding noise, and the temperature gauge began to creep up. I made it back to home, and when I pulled into the driveway, the Mustang's motor made a metallic-sounding clunk, and it seized to a stop. That was the last ride of the Mustang. The tire from the semi-truck had ripped through the radiator and the oil pan and had caused the motor to throw a piston rod. The type of accident that I had just been through on the beltway is known as a tire blowout, and there is an estimated 1.2 million of these occurring on the highways in the United States each year, causing about 82,000 crashes and 700 fatalities. I had been lucky the tire that exploded was not intact, and all it did was do in my old $400 beat-up car. Semi-truck tires on the roadways can be particularly dangerous. When I was working in Austin, a case came in from I-35. It was a single-vehicle accident. A 49-year-old woman was found dead in her car on the side of the highway. Her car had massive damage to the front windshield, and the roof was partially ripped away. The dash and steering wheel also exhibited damage, but whatever hit her car was nowhere to be found, and there were no witnesses. At autopsy, she had extensive blunt force injuries of the head. There was a gaping laceration of her forehead exposing a large open skull fracture, and the brain was completely avulsed. It was found in the back seat, completely pulverized into mush. Her face was crushed, forcing her nose inward, rupturing her eyes, and exploding the maxilla and mandible, and her teeth were all over the car. She was actually unidentifiable and had to be identified through the use of fingerprints. The police searched for what could have caused the damage. They found the culprit. It was an intact semi-truck tire that had come off the rear of a truck because part of the wheel rim had broken, and the tire worked itself free off the axle and then went bouncing down the roadway, bounced over a highway median, into the decedent's windshield and roof of her car, and hit the decedent, ripping through the car, tearing the roof open, and rupturing the decedent's head, and then continued bouncing down the roadway, coming to rest several hundred yards away in the parking lot of, ironically, an auto parts store. This type of tire-involved accident is known as a wheel-off accident. Semi-tractor trailer trucks have 3 different types of tires on them, and these are steer tires, drive tires, and trailer tires. They are all composed of multiple layers of natural rubber for heat resistance and flexibility, synthetic rubber for wear resistance, carbon black and silica for strength, and steel belts for strengthening a tire for heavy loads and enhancing durability. And these are all covered with an overlying reinforced casing. The 3 different tires have different levels of each of these components. Steer tires are designed to be tougher and not as susceptible to damage, and they are the front tires of the truck and are for handling and steering. Drive tires are positioned behind the steer tires in sets of 2 on the rear axles of the front cab unit. And trailer tires are located at the very rear, mounted on axles underneath the trailer bed, arranged in sets of 4. They are free-rolling, designed to carry the load and to handle tight turns. The tires are mounted on a metal wheel or rim, and this is secured directly to the wheel hub with lug nuts. The wheel hub is connected to the suspension and the axle. A semi-truck tire by itself weighs an average of 110 pounds, and a mounted semi-truck assembly tire and rim can weigh anywhere from 150 pounds to over 200 pounds, and a dual wheel can be as much as 400 pounds. The weight of these tires, combined with highway speed, can easily total a passenger car if they strike them, and can create a risk of severe injury or death. According to the National Transportation Safety Board, as many as 750 to 1,050 tractor-trailer wheel separations occur every year, or roughly 2 to 3 wheel-off accidents occur every day. A wheel-off accident is defined as when a vehicle, it doesn't have to be a semi-truck, loses one or more wheels while in motion, which can lead to loss of control, collisions, or severe damage. It can be caused by a number of factors, and these are mechanical failure, which is loose lug nuts, worn wheel bearings, or axle damage, improper maintenance, collision or impact, such as hitting curbs or potholes or even other vehicles, and overloading. The excessive weight on trucks or trailers can cause stress of the axles and the wheel assemblies, resulting in failure. When the wheels come off, they then can cause loss of vehicle control, which causes the driver to swerve or roll over, and collisions. The detached wheels or the vehicle itself may strike other vehicles, pedestrians, or roadside objects. The most common cause of wheel-off truck accidents are due to defective or derelict parts and human errors in installation and maintenance, with 40% of them occurring because of loose or missing lug nuts. The last case I'm going to discuss was a 33-year-old woman that was a passenger in a pickup truck. Her and her husband were driving down the highway when they were passed by a semi-truck. They didn't think anything of it. It was a flatbed truck. It had multiple metal rods tied down on the trailer, and when the truck switched lanes and got in front of them, it started pulling away. But then something fell off the back. It bounced a couple of times on the highway, then hit the grill of the pickup truck, tumbled across the hood, smashed through the windshield on the passenger side. The object then entered the car and struck the female passenger, hitting her in the chest, and then it tumbled into her face before it exited the rear window of the pickup truck. She was instantly incapacitated. Her husband pulled quickly over to the shoulder, called 911, pulled her out, and started CPR. Before the paramedics could arrive, she was dead, and they pronounced her dead at the scene. At autopsy, she had 2 lacerations of her chest that were connected by a large rectangular bruise. Underlying these lacerations, there was fracturing of the ribs, bruising and laceration of the heart and lungs, and bleeding into the chest cavity. There were multiple laceration and bruises of her face, chin, and neck, with underlying fractures of the maxilla and mandible, and of the skull. One laceration was a large gaping laceration that involved the left eye and forehead, with underlying fracture of the skull and associated contusions of her brain. Her cause of death was blunt force injuries, and manner of death was accident. Because of the patterned wound on the chest, the officers went back and investigated the accident scene to see if they could figure out what the object was. They scoured the area and eventually found a 10-inch piece of rectangular steel. When they brought it in, it matched the bruising on her chest perfectly. So we knew what the object was. It had more likely broke off from the steel that was being hauled by the truck for unknown reasons, and then bounced on the highway, striking the pickup truck and hitting the decedent. They never found the semi-truck that was hauling the load, which commonly occurs in these type of accidents. It was long gone. The American Automobile Association defines road debris as generally any object on a roadway that does not belong in the driving environment, and can include bumpers, wheels, tires, furniture, tools, building materials, trees, rocks, concrete, metal debris, and the list goes on and on. The AAA researched accidents associated with road debris looking at the time period between 2018 through 2023, and they found on average there are 53,000 accidents, 5,500 injuries, and 72 deaths each year from road debris. So it isn't super common, but it does happen. And since 2001, accidents involving road debris have increased 40% in the United States. More than 1 in 3 crashes involve debris occurring between 10 a.m. and 3:59 p.m., a time when many people are on the road hauling or moving heavy items like furniture or construction equipment, and 40% of the debris is associated with vehicles hauling unsecured loads. The debris causing the largest number of fatalities is separated trailers, followed by wheels or tires, tire treads, pieces of plastic, and finally metal fragments. Even small items can be dangerous when it falls off a vehicle, especially on the highway, because the vehicles are driving at high rates of speed. The objects become like missiles, can penetrate the cabin of the vehicle by going through the windshield, causing injury. They can damage the motor, puncture the tires, or damage the underside of the vehicle, and these can result in the vehicle losing control, sliding, and then crashing. The AAA study found the following crash types associated with road debris. The vehicle strikes a non-fixed, non-moving, or falling object. The vehicle is struck by a moving or falling object, or the vehicle crashes after taking evasive action trying to avoid an object. Nearly half of all deaths occur when drivers are performing these evasive actions, losing control of their vehicles and crashing into someone else, something else, or rolling over. So it's not just the debris that is dangerous, it's also the driver's actions. When it comes to road debris, the greatest number of fatalities occur in Texas. It's the leader of the pack, and this is due to the high speed limits and the high volume of commercial trucks seen on the Texas highways. Finally, Beth and I kept the Mustang after its last ride in Memphis. We even towed it when we moved to the suburbs of Chicago. I always thought one day I would fix it up, but I never did. And one day, years after it had stopped working, we donated it to a charity. And that was the end of the Mustang. And that brings us to the end of the episode. I hope you were entertained, and I hope you learned something. Until the next time.